Yes, good evening and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Thursday evening on a night when we do have action from the UEFA Europa League. Now, I've been trying to get us a feed to keep tabs on some of these games. Crystal Palace in action in the UEFA Conference League against AZ Alkmaar, while Aston Villa equally in action. That game is ongoing against Maccabi Tel Aviv, while Nottingham Forest were earlier on in action. So far, all my feeds have betrayed me on that front. But regardless, we will still move on with our broadcast tonight and discuss what the latest is from the world of sport. We will be talking about Arsenal because there's some big news from out there. We'll talk about Ajax and among other things in as far as tonight is concerned, as the headline does tell us for particularly this podcast. Hi LFC, yes, I might be back in 30 minutes. I'm eating pizza. Oh, some pizza and making them. You know how to make pizza and you eating pizza? Send me a slice. Actually, not just a slice, a couple of slices of pizza. I do love pizza. But thank you so much, LFC. Otherwise, I hope you've had a wonderful day. I hope it's been a wonderful Thursday for you. And yeah, it's exactly 20 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. Here in Kampala, Uganda, where we do come to you live from to once again digest the latest that there is from the world of football. So yeah, digest the latest that there is from the world. Apologies on that. I was just having our audios tested to make sure everything does check out because like I've said, we burnt our fingers at before on a couple of occasions. But I hope you guys are experiencing some bit of improved audio quality because we managed to get some new equipment to improve on our audio. There's a lot still to be done on our video. I hope with God's luck and favor, we will also get to improve that one. My current phone keeps drumming those alarm bells of anytime I'm giving up on you. As we speak, it has about 6 lines in it. But anyways, we will move on now regardless and continue to deliver you the best that there is from the world of football. Today, like I said, we will start off things with a news from Ajax, where they did sack their manager, Heitinga. And I mean, ever since Ten Hag left Ajax, they've never been the same. They've never been the same club. We remember them for being a very good side, competing favorably well in the UEFA Champions League. You remember them in 2019, when they gave Real Madrid lots of headache. Though they've always been a very good side, and yet in recent times they have struggled with their managerial position. It's something that they've struggled with over the years. So John Heitinga is the latest manager to be sacked by Ajax, and now they are back into the market looking for a new manager. They are back in the market looking for a new manager. And I mean, it's not always a good thing to always be in the market for a new manager because that speaks to very many underlying problems, within that. But as of present day, as of right now, they have Fred Grimm, I think, as the interim, is a Dutchman. Last season they had Francesco Farioli. Yes, Francesco Farioli. He sort of came close to winning them the Dutch Eredivisie title, but then PSV Eindhoven beat them to the title when they went and dropped points literally for fun and couldn't things get over the line. They had John Van I don't know how to pronounce the other name, and things did not work out. They've had Maduro, and things did not work out. They've had Morris Stein, and things did not work out. John Heitinga was returning for the second spell, by the way, because he had been with them in 2023, for a short spell there, for a period, I think, of about, close on to 6 months. And then it was Ten Hag, who had been there for 4 years before he left to join Manchester United. But ever since then, they've struggled to find the perfect replacement or the perfect manager for them. Now, as we speak, they are into negotiations with Ten Hag over a potential return to Ajax there. Remember, he himself got sacked after only 2 games in charge with German Bundesliga side Bayer Leverkusen. So, could it be the perfect reunion that Ajax are looking to conjure in their pursuit of Ten Hag? We can only wait and see what there is in stock for Ajax in regards to their managerial search, because looks like the market for very good managers is similar to that market of very good strikers. It's a bit of a small market, managers are having to be recycled here and there, so we will wait and see. What they will have to say about that. But according to Fabrizio Romano, he did say that Ten Hag has been approached by Ajax over a possible return to the club as Heitinga got sacked. Talks ongoing, but no decision yet by Ten Hag, who already did advance talks with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, we know Wolverhampton Wanderers just a couple of days ago were considering him for that vacant role following the sacking of Vitor Pereira, but then they've also considered Edwards from Middlesbrough, but Middlesbrough looks like Middlesbrough are not willing to budge to let go of Edwards. So equally, Wolverhampton Wanderers are having their own search for a new manager, and so far it's not working out the way perhaps they would have hoped, the way they would have wanted. It's becoming perhaps a little more difficult than they had anticipated in that search for a new manager. So that's what's happening at Ajax. Then quickly, we will be taking the flight out of Netherlands and returning back to the UK, where Arsenal have some major news as of today, because after 10 months in absence through injury, through an anterior cruciate ligament injury, Gabriel Jesus is back in full training with the Gunners. Yes, you heard it right. Gabriel Jesus is back in full training with the Gunners. Now, there is cause of excitement for Arsenal fans, but also there is cause for skepticism for Arsenal fans. Particularly, I'll take my case in point. My skepticism has everything to do with his track record with injuries. It's been injury after injury. Ever since his debut campaign with the Gunners, I think 2022-2023, he's never been the same player really. He suffered, a whole, injury after injury, setback after setback, and we know that an anterior cruciate ligament injury usually takes a period of around 8 to 9 months, sometimes 7 to 8, depending on how quickly a player, goes through their recovery. But it's taken Gabriel Jesus 10 months, and I have everything to believe that it's partly because Arsenal wanted to really take their time with him, because it's not the first time he struggled with a knee injury. No, it's not the first time. And I hope it is the last. I hope it is. I really hope it is the last, for both his sake and for Arsenal's sake, because like I told you guys over the course of the transfer window, during the course of the summer, that Arsenal's plan was to let go of Gabriel Jesus. Their plan was to part ways with Gabriel Jesus because again, because of the injury kind of track record, not because of his footballing abilities, because God knows Arteta really loves him. And for those of you that remember, when they joined Arsenal in 2022, Gabriel Jesus and Alexander Zinchenko, they were those players that brought more belief to that Arsenal squad that were literally trying to fight and finish within, at the top 4 places, that they could really try and gun for the title, and they gave it their go. That's the season in which they spent the most number of days at the summit of the league table and not go on to win the title. In Premier League history, 248 days, and then eventually Manchester City beat them to the title. And for those of you that remember the couple of losses they suffered, I think they lost to Brighton, they lost to Brighton, they lost to Nottingham Forest, they shared spoils with West Ham, they drew games against Southampton, and they just fell off, So really, it was that kind of season. He was that revolutionary in terms of this Arteta project, in terms of moving it from one stage to the next stage. But ever since then, that debut campaign, he's been in and out of the team. He's been in and out of the team. And for a player who is supposed to be a striker, when you look at his numbers, they're not very promising numbers in terms of statistics. In terms of statistics, whether whether you boil it down to match appearances, whether you boil it down to whether you boil it down to goals contributed, the numbers are not very, very promising. Again, let's okay. Unfortunately, this feed, my feed is giving me lesser perhaps stats than I would have loved. But particularly when you go back to the last season, he played only 17 games in the Premier League. That's less than 50% of the games there is in the Premier League. He only scored 3 goals, 0 assists. 3 goals in 17 games, not good enough. Nowhere near good enough. When you go back to the previous season, to the season before last, that was 2023-2024 campaign. He played 27 games. That means he missed about 8 plus 3 is about 11. He missed about 11 Premier League games. But even then, he scored only 4 goals and provided 5 assists. That meant a 9-goal contribution. It is in that very season where he had a better goal contribution in the UEFA Champions League, scored 4 goals in 8 games and also provided 3 assists, which was a 7-goal involvement. So really, then I'm trying to see if I can get data from okay, no, not that. That's not what I meant. But let's try and go back to his debut campaign with Arsenal in the Premier League and see what he had in that regard. If we can, oh, Jesus Christ, come on. Okay, overall in the Premier League, if you to go by overall in the Premier League, he's had 229 appearances, 76 goals, and 40 assists. Those numbers sound decent. They do sound decent. But when you go back to his debut campaign, he made 26 appearances, scored 11 goals, and provided 6 assists. That was a 17-goal involvement. That's his best season in an Arsenal jersey. It's never been the same again. It's never been the same again. That was in the Premier League alone, 11 goals. And even 11 goals in 26 games isn't the best of tallies of numbers for a striker. But you would take that and combine it with the assists because he was a very, very impactful player, But ever since then, he's never been the same player. But nonetheless, given Arsenal's recent injury concerns or how they've struggled with injuries, it's not. There's nothing to suggest that it's going to stop, but it gives you a sense of optimism that at least they are starting to welcome back some players from injury. And Gabriel Jesus, we know he's missed the entirety of the start of the season, having suffered his anterior cruciate ligament injury. Like I said, that has kept him out of action for the last 10 months. He's had no preseason, of course. He's only had his first full training session with the team. So, but he is back in full training after those many 10 months. Now, there's a lot to be positive about. Like I said, the reason as to why there's something to be positive about, one, he gives you options. If you're Mikel Arteta, if you're Arsenal, he gives you an option, to play with. Whether you want to play him on the right wing, on the left wing, as a center forward, he will give you those options. Even if you want to play him as a 10, we know he's a workaholic. I think he's one of those forward players that is very, very good with the counter press. He never stops running. the dribbling skills are there. Sometimes the final touch, the final ball eludes him. Is not as good as you'd love it to be, but I think he's capable of playing for you all those 4 positions: left wing, right wing, as a number 10, as the lead forward. So, that's the kind of player. So he's back in training, and there's a picture of him, touching the corner sort of arc. He normally makes the sign of the cross as he comes onto the pitch. So, but we've seen him with the rest of the team in training. I remember Arsenal do return to action. I think that's going to be on Saturday when they travel to Sunderland. By the Sunderland, by measure, have one of the biggest stadiums by surface area. They have one of the biggest pitches by surface area. So that game will come on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. So subsequent to that, of course, there will be other games that we'll get to digest. I'm going to be telling you what the fixtures will look like going into the weekend, particularly. But yeah, Arsenal will be playing away to Sunderland. A very, very difficult game. I do not remember, and I stand to be corrected on this, I do not think Sunderland have lost a game at home so far this season. Like I said, I stand to be corrected. The most recent encounter was a 1-1 draw with Everton. At Sunderland, they've beaten up against teams like West Ham United. I think that was on match day 1. Those are some of the games they've won. They've also gone away and won some serious games. Went to Nottingham Forest and beat them by 1-0. Went to Stamford Bridge and beat up against Chelsea by 2-1. So they're no strangers winning away from their own backyard. So really, let's see. Then also, at home, they also, I think, beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Was that at home? Yes, at home. They beat up against Wolves by 2-0. And then, so those are some have been some of the games that they've played at home, and they've been winning. So like I said, it kicked off with that victory against West Ham by 3-0. So at home, they're a very, very good team. So Arsenal will be knowing that. But this is not the preview for that game. Our news is regarding the return of Gabriel Jesus. Arsenal fans, I think, like I said, because of what he offers the team, take the goals away from off of the table, because he's very inconsistent with those. He's not the kind of player that you rely on for goals. Yes, that's why he was bought, to score some goals, to be the goal scorer. But we know he's not your traditional number 9. He's that hybrid of a centre forward who enjoys drifting so deeply back, and then oftentimes by the time they carry the ball forward, he's not in the right position to be the goal scorer, and that's why he doesn't score one too many goals. So looking at, I think we've had a couple of Arsenal players that have suffered anterior cruciate ligament injuries over the time. For example, we had Hector Bellerin suffer a similar injury. We had Rob Holding suffer a similar injury. We had Urian Timber in his debut campaign. I think that was the 2023-2024 campaign when he had just arrived. He suffered a similar injury. Now, of all those players, only Urian Timber has returned and sort of hit the ground running. Of course, there was some caution taken for his return, because the advantage for him, he returned at the tail end of the season in which he suffered that injury, and then he took his, he played a few minutes, I think, in that season, and then he had that summer, the continuation of recovery, sort of slow without too much pressure, even into the 2024-2025 campaign. He was sort of eased into the team because Ben White was still available, until he also had to undergo his knee surgery later on last season. So, in other words, when I remember Hector Bellerin, when he returned, he was never the same quality of player that he had been. Yes, he still had some good sprints here and there, but never the same player. Rob Holding, it was thereabout. So Arsenal fans are hoping that maybe Gabriel Jesus' return could be different, could be similar to what they saw with Urian Timber, and that would be really, really impressive if he can prevent from getting more injuries there on, and he stays fit, then he will be a very, very good addition to this Arsenal side. He is the only player in that Arsenal squad that has ever won a Premier League title. He won a couple of those with Manchester City. So he's the only player that who knows the feeling of winning a Premier League title, who knows what it means to win a Premier League title, who knows the kind of scrutiny you are under, or how heavy it could weigh on your shoulders, especially in the last 8 games of the season. If you are there within the title conversation, he knows what it takes, So it's been 298 days after tearing his ACL that Gabriel Jesus makes his official return to first team training with the Gunners. So, for a person that has missed the first 3 months of the season, that's August, October, and September, I think, of course, factoring in that we're going into the international break, given that we started the season midway August, you combine those two and it's 3 complete months. You really, really hope that if Arsenal could have him available for the next 7 months of the season, is it even 7 months, possibly, or 6 months of the season, maybe 6.5, he is going to be very, very, very crucial. Like I said, he gives them options. He's very capable. He's a capable player. And the reason that's why I talk about this option thing is because, for example, look in around the December period, how Arsenal have a congestion of fixtures, including a quarterfinal game against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup. You're going to need those kinds of players to chip in those kinds of games. As soon as you exit that December crowding, which will have you for Champions League games, a marathon of Premier League fixtures, which, by the way, I've never understood that sort of panic with the Premier League of beating the mid-season mark of 19 games in December, and yet all through the start of the season, they literally stay away from midweek games, and yet they could, by the first week of the season, you could start having midweek games, the way they do it in Spanish La Liga, the way they do it in the Italian Serie A sometimes. So really, I've never understood that. But anyways, it is their schedule. They know how they want things to run. But as you escape the business of December, if you are able to go through it unscathed, when you kick into January, the first weekend often in January is you have the FA Cup. Those are the kind of games you want to call upon players like Gabriel Jesus, and say Victor Gyökeres, have a rest. Kai Havertz, if he's back and picked up the momentum, maybe have a rest and let the Gabriel Jesus start these games. That's the kind of a squad that you ought to have. That's the kind of, a player profile that you need on your bench to know that if Victor Gyökeres has given me 1 goal, or if it has not worked out for him, I can call on Kai Havertz, I can call on Gabriel Jesus to see if we can change our fortunes in the game. So it's really, really exciting to see Gabriel Jesus return from injury. I wanted us to pick some reaction from some Arsenal fans and beyond just the news of it, and see what, if anything, is worth reading in regards to what they had to say about his return. Somebody said, okay, no. Somebody said, this is Eduardo Hagan. Eduardo Hagan on Twitter said, Timber came from an ACL injury like nothing happened. If Gabriel Jesus does the same, he could be an important piece for Arsenal this season. That was a reaction from me. I am nostalgia. I'm nostalgia merchant. It would be poetic to see Gabriel Jesus lift a major title with us after him being brought to do just that. I think that he's speaking in reference to the Brazilian national team. What it would mean if he could make it, if he goes on to have a good season and stays injury-free, he could be in contention for the Brazilian squad for the World Cup. We know that Brazil are struggling with strikers. Rodrigo Goes, Vinicius Jr., Gabriel Martinelli, all these wingers have sort of under-delivered. Richarlison as one of the target man, they've all under-delivered. But I mean, I'm not. It's not to say that Gabriel Jesus would go and be, a Nazario Darima if he were to be chosen to lead the Lions for Brazil. But it would give them an option, if he can't stay fit. Again, like I said, me, I'm particularly personally skeptical about Gabriel Jesus' fitness because I do not know whether it's how he goes about the game, how he plays, the same way we had it with Jack Wilshere, because Jack Wilshere was never afraid of contact. Now you cannot be a good football player and be afraid of contact. I understand that. But for a player that suffers so many injuries, sometimes you ought to go into certain deals with a certain level of precaution, especially deals that are not, it's not like a last minute tackle or a last gasp tackle to, save a situation, but in the overall context of it, because some of the contact that you make with opponents or fellow players is with how long you hold onto the ball. If you are able to release the ball and have that quick vision, then you could make less contact with players, and perhaps it helps you stay a little more injury free. Now, Gabriel Jesus has not proven to be that kind of player. I hope he's learned some lessons. I hope he can use his experience both on and off the pitch. When I say off the pitch, I mean during his time through injury, to make better decisions, to go about his game well. I'm not saying he should play with the handbrake on, to play in a reserved manner just to avoid injury. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in certain situations where it's avoidable to make contact, do not make it. Because usually most of the injuries that happen in football are contact injuries. Of course, we've seen players go down with anterior cruciate ligament injuries and they've hardly had any contact. You remember it was, I think, very little or very minimal contact with Thomas Partey and Lodri when he suffered his ACL. Hector Bellerin, there was no contact. He just went down. I think Rob Holding, something happened. So that sort of sense. This is EBL says Gabriel Jesus was nothing short of world class in the early days at Arsenal. If he comes back half as good, he will only add to Mikel's selection headache. Can see him excelling in many different roles. Number 9, second striker, both wings, praying for him. That's EBL on X, still commenting about Gabriel Jesus' return. Again, he does point out what we said earlier on about the multiple positions that he is capable of playing, and then he also adds that he would, if only returns half as good as he had been in his debut campaign with the Gunners, then he will be giving Mikel Arteta some selection headache right there. Let's see if there's more reaction to it that we can take. Saturday's encounter may come too soon, but it won't be a surprise if he is included in the matchday squad. Unlikely to start for the next few weeks. He could be limited to cameos, ups off the bench in order to build his match fitness. That's so true. I wouldn't expect that Mikel Arteta would toss him into the deep end straight back from that long-term injury. In any case, even if they are to be without Victor Gyökeres going into that weekend fixture, which by the way creates a bit of a headache for the Swedish Sweden national team manager, that's Graham Potter, because he's currently in charge of that team. Alexander Isak is out through injury. Victor Gyökeres is currently injured. So it begs the question, who do Sweden look to for their striker? I do not know all the Swedish strikers, so I won't make any pointers, but the last thing they would want to have is Anthony Elanga being their lead striker. But nonetheless, if it is to be the case that Victor Gyökeres misses Arsenal's trip to Sunderland, then Gabriel Jesus' inclusion in that matchday squad wouldn't come as a surprise for us. But I would expect that against if that were to be the case, that then Mikel Merino, who scored a brace against Slavia Praha in the UEFA Champions League on Tuesday, would lead the Lions. Not the ideal of forwards that you would want to have, because we know naturally he's a midfielder, but if the situation caused it to be so, then it can be that really. So I hope I hope the situation will be much different going into that action. Jesus Christ. How did I miss? Anyways, was checking. Anyways, we will leave the conversation for Gabriel Jesus at that and take you through what's happened in the results from the UEFA Europa League. In the early kickoffs, FC Barcelona beat up against FCSB by 3-1. Dinamo Zagreb were 3-0 losers against Celta Vigo. Then Midtjylland beat up against Celtic by 3-1. You remember Midtjylland also beat up against Nottingham Forest by 3-2. Away to Nottingham Forest. Red Bull Salzburg, FC Salzburg from Austria beat up against Go Ahead Eagles by 2-0. Utrecht and FC Porto shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw. Crvena Zvezda beat up against Lille by 1-0. I think that was a penalty. Malamo lost to Panathinaikos by 1-0, while Nice lost to Freiburg by 3-1. Nottingham Forest and Sturm Graz, that one ended in a goalless draw. I was watching that game and, Nottingham Forest tried to really leverage on set pieces, but it never really worked out that well. Then Aston Villa leading by 0-0 against Maccabi Tel Aviv. That goal may have just been scored as we speak. So they are leading by 1-0 according to my feed. And Bologna against Brann is still goalless. Ferencváros is leading 1-0 against Ludogorets. Many of these games are into halftime already. PAOK 0-0 against Young Boys. AC Roma are 2-0 up against Rangers. Tried to search for a feed for that game and I failed. Real Betis are leading by 2-0 against Olympic Lyon, while Braga it's 1-1 with Genk. VfB Stuttgart and Feyenoord is still goalless, as is Victoria Pilsen against Fenerbahce. Then in the UEFA Conference League, Crystal Palace are leading by 2-0 against AZ Alkmaar. Jean-Philippe Mateta missed a penalty in that one, but Lacrosse and Ismail Sarr were on target there for the Eagles of Crystal Palace as they stick to return to winning ways in the competition of the UEFA Conference League, having lost to Larnaca on match day 3 by 1-0. Then Strasbourg are also leading by 1-0 against BK Häcken in some of the other games, while Rapid Wien find themselves 1-0 behind against Université there. Then Lech Poznan are leading by 2-0 against Rayo Vallecano, while let me see which other game can I. Dynamo Kiev are leading 1-0 by Mostar. Against Mostar there. So those are some of the results that are happening. Unfortunately, we have failed to, get the feed for actually some of the fixtures that we wanted to, have our focuses built on in as far as the UEFA Europa League is concerned. But nonetheless, we will always try to do better next time. And like I said, perhaps next time. Then quickly, like I promised you, was to bring you what the latest, what the Premier League weekend for match day 11 will look like. Remember, this is going to be the last weekend. This is going to be the last weekend before we head into the November international break. So it won't be until around November 22nd that we will see a return of Premier League fixtures, in which Arsenal will return with a game against Tottenham Hotspur, play Bayern Munich in midweek, and then play at Chelsea. Meanwhile, Chelsea themselves will have a game, I think, against Barcelona in prior to the Arsenal game, but they play Wolverhampton Wanderers over the weekend. So we will see. Let's see who Chelsea have upon their return. Then upon return from the international break, they'll have a Burnley. So after the Burnley fixture, I think that's when they will show up in the UEFA Champions League. That's when they will be in action in the UEFA Champions League. Let's see for those matches, because whatever happens, whatever will be in stock for match day 5 could have an impact on the weekend prior and the weekend after. Yes, Chelsea will be at home against Barcelona. Now, Barcelona, I mean, for what we saw against them, against our club Club Rouge, then really Chelsea should fancy themselves beating up against that Barcelona side if they're going to play with that kind of high line. All they need to do is bring the kind of A game that they brought against Tottenham Hotspurs, and they will really have a good chance to suffice in that game. In the kind of week where we will have Atletico de Madrid up against Inter, where we will have Arsenal up against Bayern Munich, where we will have PSG up against Tottenham Hotspur. So even Tottenham Hotspurs themselves, really, they return from the international break to face off with Arsenal, they'll have PSG in the midweek. So it's not like they will be having lesser opponents. So, but it will be a very difficult period of time for those North London clubs. Nonetheless, here is what to come your way on match day 11 of the Premier League. The early kickoff at 3:30 p.m. will come between Tottenham Hotspurs and Manchester United. Now, 3:30 p.m., that should be 12:30 UK time. So Tottenham will be at home against Man United. Then at 6 p.m. we'll have two games between Everton and Fulham, while West Ham United will take on Burnley. So for those of you that care to know in those games. And then after that, at 8:30 p.m., Arsenal will be up against will be away to Sunderland, while in the late kickoff on Saturday will be Chelsea up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And then on Super Sunday, we will have 4 games kickoff at 5 p.m., including Aston Villa at home against Bournemouth. Brentford will be at home against Newcastle. Very difficult games, by the way. Crystal Palace will be at home against Brighton and Hove Albion. I mean, the weekend is going to be very hard to predict, by the way. Nottingham Forest will be at home against Leeds United, while Manchester City will entertain Liverpool at the Etihad Stadium for match day 11 on Super Sunday. I mean, there's plenty of exciting. We will begin previewing these fixtures tomorrow morning and Friday night. You know that on Friday night we usually come earlier than 11 p.m. We come at around 9 p.m. To discuss, to go through the preview, and then we continue with the conversation on Saturday as we see what action you should be looking forward to from in and around Europe going into the weekend. So do not miss out on that conversation. Of course, this particularly the Manchester City and Liverpool game, I think it comes at a very interesting time. First of all, the fixture in itself does come at a time when both teams have Liverpool have recovered from their Black October. They've won 2 games on the spin without conceding, 2-0 against Aston Villa and a goal 2-0 against Real Madrid. Beautiful performances in both games, one an upgrade on the other. Now they get to face off with Man City, who, by the way, themselves have been, scoring for fun. 7 goals took only to conceded in the last 2 games, 3-1 against Bournemouth and 4-1 against Borussia Dortmund. Scintillating form, really. Manchester City only had that blip of a loss to Aston Villa. So really, it does promise to be a very exciting encounter. Nonetheless, my gut feeling already has a 1-1 draw screaming in my ears. I do not know whether that will be the prediction I give tomorrow. I do not know whether the context will have changed. But given how Liverpool have fared in recent times, vis-a-vis how Manchester City have equally behaved, I would not be surprised one bit if that game were to end in a draw. But like I said, we will get to preview those games. Nottingham Forest Leeds. I'd fancy Nottingham Forest to win this one, for Sean Dyche to get his first Premier League victory. Remember, his first game in charge in the Premier League was against Bournemouth. They lost by 2-0. His subsequent game was a 2-2 draw against Manchester United. So, a home game against Leeds United, that one I'd fancy Nottingham Forest to win. Crystal Palace against Brighton and Hove Albion, very difficult game. But Palace capable of winning that one. Brentford against Newcastle. Brentford have been fairly good at the GTEC Stadium. They've beaten they've beaten Man United there, 3-1. They've beaten Liverpool 3-2 there. They only lost to Man City by a goal to 0. So Newcastle have been... The Newcastle that plays in the UEFA Champions League must be different from the one that plays in the Premier League, because the one in the UEFA Champions League is much better than the one that plays in the Premier League. Aston Villa looking to bounce back from that defeat against Liverpool, against Bournemouth. Bournemouth themselves on the back of a defeat against Manchester City. Wow. Entertaining fixture that we should expect. Do I give Aston Villa the edge? Yes, because they're at home. Would I be surprised if Bournemouth were to force a draw? Not one bit. Chelsea against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Chelsea are very inconsistent, but it's a game I expect them to win. I expect them to win. Arsenal against Sunderland. If you're serious about winning the Premier League title, on a weekend where you have Manchester City up against Liverpool, where you'd hope that the two sides draw, go and beat up against Sunderland. I do not care how good they've been against big teams this season. I do not care how good they were in their last game against Everton. I do not care how good they were in their last game prior to that, when they beat up against Chelsea by 2-1. Just can't win the game. Arsenal. West Ham Burnley. West Ham have all the inspiration from the previous weekend where they surprised the world and won a game of football against Newcastle by 3-1. Nuno Espirito Santo, do whatever it takes to beat up against Burnley. That's when you get your second victory on the spin. That's when you get West Ham's third victory of the season. Remember, their only first victory had come against Nottingham Forest. Everton Fulham, difficult game. Fulham did return back to winning ways over the weekend as they beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-0. Everton have had their struggles recently. Wouldn't be surprised if it was another one all draw. Man United, Tottenham Hotspurs. Wouldn't be surprised one bit if Tottenham Hotspurs beat up against Manchester United by 1-0 or by 2-1. We'll wait and see. Those are not my official predictions. Was just running through those fixtures. Anyways, clocks have struck midnight. Allow me wish you a blessed night and get to some other duties as well, because night duty never stops until later on. It's been a pleasure having you for part of this podcast. Thank you so much, LFC, and every single one of you that managed to tune in. For those of you that are always behind closed doors or in the ventilators, Kamoli, like we prefer to call it, we do appreciate you. Those who watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your love and support for granted. We do not take your time for granted. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a blessed night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 9. We'll be here to preview some of these games. At least be rest assured. Tottenham Man United will be previewing that one tomorrow. Arsenal Sunderland will be tackling it. Chelsea Wolverhampton Wanderers will be tackling it. Actually, all the fixtures that will come on Saturday. Then, at night, Friday night, 9 p.m., around there, then we will tackle the Sunday games. And then Saturday, we'll shed more light on that Manchester City game versus Liverpool, but also really talk about other big European fixtures. You've been a wonderful audience. Have yourselves a blessed night. Bye-bye for now.